Hi, and welcome to JAC Products Visual Inspection Training, Lesson 1. This introduction will explain the purpose of this training, as well as some important information you will need to know as you continue with later lessons. Let's get started. This training is designed for all levels of operators. If you are a new employee, we will provide you with all of the tools necessary to begin inspecting parts. If you are a seasoned JAC veteran, this training will serve as a refresher to help enhance your inspection skills. It is important to have everyone inspect parts the same way so the results are repeatable. This training will provide a standard inspection technique. Performance to our customer is extremely important, and we want to reduce the amount of unacceptable defects sent to them. It is also very costly to reject parts that are acceptable. This training will provide guidelines to help operators make appropriate decisions. CAS stands for Corporate Appearance Standard. It is used by the entire JAC company, so whether you're at Saline, Shelby, or Franklin, we all use the same standards. JAC operators use the CAS to determine if parts they are building are acceptable to the customer standards. Our suppliers use the CAS to inspect the parts they will ship to us. The JAC sales team uses the CAS to develop the quote to our customers. And finally, our customers use the CAS to determine if we are shipping acceptable product. Between January 2014 and June 2015, over half of the rejects we received from our customers were appearance related. This includes all different types of defects that are listed on the CAS. Customer rejections not only cause a negative image to our customers, but it also costs a lot of money. Items such as added inspection points to the process, more requirements for our operators to do when inspecting, such as China marks, labels, or initialing parts, all take extra time. The customer also charges us for their labor to inspect our parts and possible line stoppages. Or the customer may want to visit us more often, which takes more time for our engineers to prepare and spend with them. Who is responsible for CAS? You are. Everyone plays a big part in assuring visually acceptable parts are being shipped to the customer. Now it's time to take a test. Read the questions and multiple choice answers. Fill in the circle on your test paper corresponding to the answer you think is correct. Let's do an experiment. When the letters appear on the screen, you will have 10 seconds to count as many letter Ds as you can. Are you ready? So, how do you think you did? Write down on your test paper how many Ds you found. Think about how you looked at the letters. Did you follow a pattern up and down or across? Or did you randomly look for the letter Ds? What could have made this task easier? When inspecting product, the best way to look at it is by following a pattern. We call that the eye path. Just like reading a book, you will move your eyes from left to right. Our little friend R2-D2 will show us the eye path we will follow. Let's take the same set of letters and look at them in a different way. Focus on each letter as it appears on the screen. Don't worry about counting them this time. I think you've got the hang of it now. Well, let's do it one more time a little faster. This time, count the number of D's that you see. There were 11 D's on the page. Now that you have practiced, I'm going to show you a new set of letters. This time, you will have 10 seconds to count the letter N's. Use the iPath that you just learned to scan the page. When you are done, write down on your test paper how many you found. In summary, when looking at parts, use the iPath, moving your eyes from left to right, just like you do when reading a book. And use your eyes to scan the entire part. The inspection technique to use when inspecting all parts has 3 simple steps. First, hold the part at eye level. Second, extend your arms out straight so that the part is approximately 2 feet away from your eyes. Finally, rotate the part 360 degrees so that you are able to look at the entire part. Don't forget to use the iPath you just learned in Lesson 2 to look from left to right. One technique we do not want you to do is to shotgun the part. Shotgunning is when you hold the part like a gun and look down it. This is not an acceptable technique. When you are holding a part, make sure your hands are not covering part of the area that you're looking at. The best way to hold the part is to have the palms of your hands facing up. This allows you to hold the part but not cover any of the surfaces. It's time for another test. Read the questions in multiple choice answers. Fill in the circle on your test paper corresponding to the answer that you think is correct. There are 5 components of the CAS. They are title, notes and audit procedure, zone classifications, defects, and allowable conditions. Let's look at each of these in more detail. The title defines what part or product this CAS should be applied to. The example shown is specifically for the TMMC 420A parts. It will also describe the type of finish defined in the standard. This example is designed for painted product. Section 2 is the Notes and Audit Procedure. This section reminds you to inspect the part at arm's length. It also dictates the requirements for the area you are performing the inspecting, like how bright the lights should be. Finally, it also discusses special conditions that you should be aware of, such as not counting defects less than 0.3 millimeters in size, or there can only be a total of 5 defects of any type on the A surface. Be sure to read this section before starting the job. Zone classifications in Section 3 are very important. This is a picture of the part that shows you what type of surface each area of the part is classified as. Without this, you would not know what acceptance criteria to follow. Section 4 shows all of the defects you need to be aware of. The defect type lists the commonly used name of the defect. If you are not sure what the defect is, you can read a description. Finally, there are pictures of each defect to help you identify what is on the part you are inspecting. Section 5 has all of the criteria that you will need to review to determine if a defect is acceptable or not. Notice that each of the zone classifications are listed with their requirements. It is important to make sure you know what zone of the part the defect is located on, so you can look in the correct column. In the attribute column, there are different criteria that must all be met for a defect to be acceptable. The first is max size. This is telling you how big the defect can be. For this example, the defect must be less than or equal to 2 millimeters in size. Anything bigger than 2 millimeters is a reject. Next is minimum distance. If there is more than one defect of this type in the zone, you must measure the distance between them. In this example, the defects must be at least 100 millimeters apart from each other. If they are closer than that, it is a reject. Finally is max quantity. This tells you how many defects of this type are allowed in the zone. This example shows that there are only 2 defects allowed. If there are more than 2, reject the part. Now let's look at an example and walk through the attribute criteria. Is the size of this defect 2 millimeters or smaller? Yes, both are shown to be at 2 millimeters. Is the distance between them 100 millimeters or more? Yes, the distance is shown to be 100 millimeters. Are there 2 defects or less? Yes, there are only 2 defects. Based on the answers to those questions, you would pass this part. Remember, you must answer yes to each question. If any of them was a no, you would have rejected this part. Let's look at another example. But wait a minute, why are there multiple numbers listed for max size? Don't worry, it's actually really easy to understand. You would read it like this. If any of the defects are less than or equal to 1.5 millimeters in size, the defects must be 50 millimeters apart from each other, and you are allowed a quantity of 3. But wait, there's more. As an added bonus, if all of the defects are less than or equal to 1 millimeter, they still have to be 50 millimeters apart from each other, but you can have a quantity of 5 defects. In this example, all 3 defects are less than or equal to 1.5 millimeters, and they are at least 50 millimeters apart from each other. This part would be passed based on the first set of criteria in orange. This shows 5 defects, and they are all less than or equal to 1 millimeter, and they are all 50 millimeters apart from each other. This part would be a pass based on the second set of criteria in yellow. But what about this part? One of the defects is 1.5 millimeters, and the other 2 are at 1 millimeter. Because there is one defect greater than 1 millimeter, but less than or equal to 1.5 millimeters, you will use the orange criteria and pass this part. Now we can put it all together and read the CAS. Let's pretend you have a TMMC 420A part and it is painted, and you want to determine if you should ship the part. It has a defect which you determine to be on the A surface. After reading the descriptions and looking at pictures of defects, you identify this defect as dirt. Now you follow the dirt line over to where it intercepts the Zone A line and voila! Here is the criteria you use to make your decision. Easy, right? It's test time. Each question has a CAS specification and defect information. Using the information provided, determine if you would pass or fail the part and fill in the circle on your test paper corresponding to your answer. The particle template is a tool that operators can use to measure the size of each defect and how far away they are from each other. There are many methods to use on this template, so let's look at each one of them. The first method we will look at is the ruler. This is just like any other tape measure or ruler that you may use at home. Simply line up the beginning point of the defect at the 0 mark and read the number at the end of the defect. This can be used to measure scratches, paint runs, or even distance between defects. Defined lines is another measurement tool like the ruler. These lines were printed at different common lengths. Sometimes it's easier to take the line that is the criteria length and overlay it on the defect. If a dent cannot be any bigger than 1 millimeter, take the 1 millimeter line and place it on the dent. If it covers the dent, then it is a pass. If you can still see the dent, then it is a reject. Typically, we define a hairline scratch as one that you cannot feel with your fingernail. But not everyone can use their fingernails to feel a scratch, so we have added a scratch width measurement method. Simply place the box with the different scratch widths over the scratch on the part and determine which line best fits the defect. In this case, the scratch on the part is wider than the hairline example. Distance arcs are a very quick way of determining defects that are 10, 20, or 30 millimeters apart from each other. This is a good tool when the exact distance is not required, only if it is greater or less than a specified number. To do this, align the edge of the defect against the line of the inner circle. Next, look at the edge of the defect closest to the defect in the inner circle. If we wanted to know if the defects were greater than 10 millimeters apart from each other, we would ask, is the edge of the second defect outside of the 10 millimeter arc? The answer would be yes, so we can conclude the defects are more than 10 millimeters apart from each other. The size template is used to determine size of dirt, bubbles, dents, and much more. They are very simple to use, but notice there are two different types, an open circle and a closed circle. So how do we use those? Let's first start with the open circle. Place the defect inside of the circle. If the defect touches any part of the inside of the circle, then the defect is bigger than the circle. Now let's try the closed circle. Place the defect inside of the closed circle. If you can see any of the defect, then the defect is bigger than the circle. There is no rule as to which circle to use. With more practice, you will see which you feel more comfortable using in each situation. Both are correct. Now it's time to take another test. Using the particle template and the corporate appearance standard for test A, you will determine if you will pass or fail the parts on your test sheet. There are 20 questions. Fill in the circle on your paper corresponding to the answer you think is correct. Use the surface classification and defect type listed for each question.